Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points Podcast. I'm Joe Garrett.
Slightly different intro, that one was like,
We're here to talk about video games, video games. Oi oi oi!
oi oi! Did I get a better one than that? Further away.
Oi oi! Oi oi! Right, sorry for this rowdy introduction. We're normally much more civilised here, but we get excited when we're in person. Once we've set up all the lights and the camera.
Movie magic.
Yeah.
You can't stop it.
This is actually a green screen. Like, I won't show you. It's a weird backdrop we decided. Anyway, welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points Podcast. Don't be fooled by this introduction. It is a podcast where we chat about video games. It's actually been a while since I've said the format of the show, so I guess in case you have joined within the last couple years and have only guessed the format from us saying it. Basically, we take turns choosing games, or sometimes a guest chooses a game. We play it for 2 weeks, we discuss it, and then we end up ranking it basically based on how much we enjoyed the 2 weeks spent with that game. And this week we are talking about Ollie's choice of game, which is Zone of Enders, the second runner.
Zone of the Enders 2.
Zone of Enders 2, the second runner. Okay.
Which I picked, I think just like off Kojima hype.
Yeah?
Death Stranding 2 trailer was pretty good. Because we planned these really far in advance. This was around the time Death Stranding 2, the long trailer came out, I think. And then, like, OD, got announced. So I was like, do you know what? I've never really given Zone of the Enders a chance. I've played Boktai, his other game. You played that?
Is that the detective one?
No, it's the, like, vampire slaying sunlight.
Is that the one that Keith Stewart had?
No, he had Police Noughts.
Okay.
Yeah, so he had Police Noughts. But yeah, Boktai is like you're a vampire slayer, and it's on the Game Boy Advance, and the cartridge has got a solar panel on it, and you hold it up to the sun, and it kills vampires, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, never played Zone of the Enders, and the only thing I knew about it is that Zone of the Enders 1 came with a demo for Metal Gear Solid 2, which is probably what made up 99% of its sales.
Yeah, and it still didn't sell very much.
It didn't sell very much.
That wasn't even it wasn't even like Crackdown 1 where it sold loads, because remember that had the Halo 3 multiplayer beta.
Yeah. And Zone of the Enders 1, in all accounts, was not very good. So Zone of the Enders 2 is the one that everyone says, don't worry about the first one. Just play the second one, in which they released a remaster of, which you played.
Yep.
And then I played the previous remaster. So it's the first time ever we're doing slightly different versions.
Yep.
And yours looked a hell of a lot better than mine. Anyway, let me read out the Wikipedia entry for Zone of the Enders 2, second runner, which is known in Japan as Anubis. Zone of the Enders is a third-person shooter hack-and-slash video game that was developed and published by Konami for the PlayStation 2 in 2003. The sequel to Zone of the Enders is based around mecha combat, with the player once again controlling the orbital frame Jehuti. Get ready to hit Jehuti 300 times.
They say it like Jehuti, don't they? Jehuti.
Jehuti's funnier though.
Jehuti.
I played the 2012 re-release on the Xbox, and then you played the 2018.
Yeah, I played the PS4 version, which is... So they made some changes, gameplay changes. Also, it's in 4K. And you could play it in VR as well. I didn't play it in VR because that doesn't feel like a game suited for VR.
No, I do have the exact differences between them.
Okay, yeah, it might be worth going through.
I'll very quickly go through. So slightly updated models, although likely not noticeable without close comparison. New subtle visual effects and sound design. New optional control scheme, which makes switching between weapons faster. A new, very easy difficulty. Native 4K playing on PS4 Pro, model viewer, and cutscene viewer.
Okay.
So not a huge amount.
No, but out of those, the big thing was at the beginning it lets you choose a control scheme. And
so how does it work on yours?
So I can basically, so as far as I can tell, on the original one, you had to kind of pause the game to switch your like weapons, your sub weapons.
Right.
And then on my one, I can have them on the D-pad. So kind of just like, imagine like Last of Us or something.
Oh, okay.
And so I can quick switch between them, and I can assign which 4 I want on there. But then if I hold that arrow, I can like quickly switch it out. So it means I can, without pausing gameplay, I can like switch between sub weapons.
Okay, so on my version, it was very similar to Metal Gear Solid. You hold a button down, and the menu pops up, and you scroll through them, and then you let go. And
so it's not like you're going into like the options. Or
no.
It's
still in the game, and it doesn't dim the screen or anything. You see everything.
Yeah,
it's just exactly like Metal Gear Solid, which I think it's going to come up quite a lot in this podcast. This game's got a lot of similarities, especially to Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah. So, well, you were saying about Kojima. So Kojima didn't direct these. He was a producer.
He directed the first one.
He directed the first one.
Yeah, and then for the second one, he was like, look, I didn't do a very good job. I like the concept. I want to see a new take on it. So I will produce the second one. And he got in a new director who was called like Shuya something. I can't remember his name. Shuya something. And then he took over from there. And then we also got a comment from Comic Sam's the Great on YouTube, who said they also tried to make a third one using the Fox engine, but that got cancelled. So he probably would have been hands off for that one too.
Yeah. Because to speak about the first one quick, so you haven't played any of them until now.
No.
So I had played a demo of the first one, and I played it quite a lot because you did back in the day with demo discs, and so I had the opposite from what most people had, where I play a lot of Metal Gear Solid and a demo of Zone of the Enders. So. So I had like a vague memory, but in my head, like in that demo, it was like a really open area, almost in like space or something. Do you remember the demo?
I don't, but I watched a review of Zone of the Enders 1, and it is quite different to Zone of the Enders 2.
Yeah, so I had that in my head, and I was actually quite pleasantly surprised when I loaded this one up, and I was like, oh no, there is like scenery and interiors and like not really exploration, but I was expecting it was going to be much more big open space and it's just about shooting at each other, which is a lot about what this is. But like my expectation of the game was different. And then the other, I think, big difference between them, I mean, there's probably quite a few, but the cutscenes. Have you seen any of the cutscenes in the first one?
I looked them up and they look terrible, don't they? They look especially bad. They're like 3D anime, like almost textureless people that are like, it looks terrible. Like you can look it up, but the 3D, cutscenes. And then the second one, they got a Japanese anime studio.
The giant upgrade.
So
like now one of the highlights of the second game was like one of the blemishes of the first one. So
yeah, for sure.
So loading up for the first time, like was this what you expected going in?
The major difference than what I was expecting to what we got was that I thought it was going to be more like a sim. So like, like Flight Sim or like any of those kind of airplane fighting games that like you kind of think about like altitude and like, but it's just a 3D action game, and you happen to be controlling a robot.
Yeah, what's the one that has that giant controller that you can use? The really
Steel Battalion. I thought it'd be more like that or like Armored Core.
Yeah,
but actually, it's just a 3D game. It's like you could be playing Devil May Cry. But
you can fly.
But you can fly. Yeah.
Because it's funny because obviously these are like, I don't know if we even said this, but like these are like giant robots. And I was always constantly confused with the scale.
Yes.
Because at first, like, you see them, like, in the cockpit, and you're like, oh, okay, so they're sitting in the head of these big robots. And so I'm like, okay, it's this many times bigger than a human.
Yeah.
But then there's one time in a level when I saw, like, a truck driving, and the truck was so tiny. I was like, oh my God, these are, like, skyscrapers.
Yes.
So, like, what size are they?
I completely agree with you. The truck was the first thing I saw that I was like, oh my God, we're huge.
Yeah.
Also, the pilots don't sit in the head.
Oh, they sit in the cockpit, don't they?
They do, yeah. Sit in the very cool design robots with giant cod pieces. All of them have swinging around at all times. That's where they sit.
In an interview, that's like intentional. Like they found that joke funny. Like that, like the play on the word cockpit.
Once I realised where they were sitting, I just found it really distracting. I hadn't even noticed that bit until I realised that's where he was sitting.
It makes no sense. Your visibility wouldn't be as good. Like,
so does that mean in VR mode, your sword swings are coming out from like up and right to your head? Because that's where the arm would be.
I mean, I bet they've just changed that, right?
I don't know.
I mean, I can't unfind.
Depends how funny I think it is.
Because you basically like teleport in this game. You move so fast. Like I can't imagine. I mean, maybe they made it work, but like I cannot imagine that being a pleasant experience. In many different ways.
Let's just quickly, for audio people, explain the actual gameplay.
Okay.
Third-person action game. You play as a robot that looks pretty much exactly like Metal Gear Ray. And you go on linear missions, and the mission is pretty much always defeat all the enemies, get to the end. There's a couple of ones that are a bit different.
Yeah, some like escort quests and stuff.
Yeah, escort things, you have to pick them up. And then basically, whenever you complete a mission, or maybe a couple of times in a mission, you'll gain a new weapon. And then by the end of it, you have like 10 sub-weapons that go along with your gun and your sword. And you can dash as well. But that's like pretty much it. Yeah,
there's a lot with say square is attack. There's a lot of variation in terms of like if you are close to an enemy, you'll use the sword. If you're far away, you'll shoot. if you're dashing, you can lock onto a
Yeah.
bunch of enemies.
Yeah.
Or if you're like hold the dash button but don't move, you can charge up like a big ball that fires like all on one button. So like if you look at the controls, you're like, oh, there's not many things,
Yeah.
but they do allow you to use a lot of different things. And then there's kind of twists for like, if you're doing a combo, you can choose at the end of the combo, do you hit the enemy up or down? Because like hitting them into like walls and scenery will do more damage. And
Yeah.
there's like particular sub-weapons that are really designed to that. So there is, you know, this is like, it is kind of like a hack and slashy game, but it's not a brainless one unless you really want it to be, like unless you turn the difficulty way
Very
down.
easy, yeah.
Yeah, because like there is strategy, be like, oh, there's a group of enemies, I should use this, or here's this thing, I want to knock it against the wall, I should use this, or like you can grab enemies and use them as weapons or as shields. If there's a big attack coming, quick, I'm going to grab a guy and like hide behind them, like to block it. So there is a bit of strategy in that regard.
Yeah, I do think the game is very, very like the difficulty is mad. Like on normal. Actually, I've actually got a note about this. I did a bit of research on this. So I played it on normal to start with. And the easy mode in Japan in the original difficulty... No, our easy mode was their normal. So the easy mode you played on was how the game originally released.
Yeah.
And then normal mode was made harder because the American audiences, they were like, this will be too easy. Then the remastered version that I played, the difficulty was boosted again.
Okay.
So when I played on normal and I was like, this is absolutely impossible. So I got used to playing like that. I played for 3.5 hours. I got quite far and then I dropped the difficulty to easy. Like played again from the beginning and I absolutely smashed it. Because I was training basically on the harder difficulty. But on
You're
easy,
like
it's
running
like,
with weights.
Yeah,
you take
literally
the
like,
weights off, yeah.
So on easy, you can kind of just continuously slash an enemy until it stops blocking. And that's more or less your strategy, right? Well,
Yeah.
I guess the grab is also really powerful, the grab attack.
Yeah, if they're blocking. So for my version, for the PS4 version, it's like recommends easy. It says like it's like if you're an experienced Zone of the Enders player, play normal.
No,
like
there isn't
everyone
any
else
of
play
those.
easy. And so because normally I play on like the default difficulty for
Yeah.
every game that we do, but for this it was like it was pushing me to play easy, and I was like, I'm not one to argue.
Yeah.
so yeah, that's why I played that.
But yeah, the on normal difficulty, pretty much the only way to hit an enemy is to force them to block and then grab them, because otherwise you just can't touch them.
Yeah.
So I kind of like got down firing at an enemy as I was moving towards it and then grabbing it as soon as it blocks. So when I got to easy, it was just like an absolute cakewalk. I think I got to like the 4th or 5th mission without even barely taking damage. So what was it like playing from the start? It must have been like, did it get boring?
I think like yeah, I mean it wasn't difficult.
Yeah.
And like they're pretty generous with like the healing, like the Metatron.
The Metatron, yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically like a thing you pick up and it will just instantly heal all of your health in a second. So there's a lot of times if there's a fight and like I see there's one of them in the room, it's like, okay, I just know that's there.
Just going mad.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna pick it up yet. Like I'm gonna wait. And so it was never a challenge. Yeah, like I'm glad it wasn't harder than it was, but I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is like super duper easy game.
Okay.
But I guess maybe that's because I started out on that difficulty. I did find that like, kind of like what you were saying, is it was kind of annoying, like just attacking loads of enemies and not doing damage. It feels like a lot of the bosses in particular will have like a bit of a gimmick where it's like, unless using this very particular sub-weapon, you're basically not doing anything. And there's so many times when I was in a boss fight where I'm just hitting an enemy and I'm like, I'm not doing any damage because it's got a shield or it's blocking or something. And then suddenly I am doing damage and I'm never really entirely sure what's changed to why, I damaged them that time compared to before. Maybe that was me.
It has that kind of like, I don't want to say half-baked, but it works half the time, the like conversation thing. So like Ada will be like, I suggest using a gauntlet. And then you can respond. And if you say, yes, that's a good idea, you'll equip the gauntlet. But if you just say, no, I'm not going to do that, you just don't use it. But like, she kind of comes in quite late and like, it doesn't always work, that response thing. Like, you never really know what's going to happen. Like,
I'll be honest, I now remember the tutorial when it first said about that.
Oh,
I
right,
I completely forgot about it after that and I didn't respond.
You can respond to everything she says. So she could be like,
she's
I
there like,
suggest-
Dingo, and I'm just like, boom, 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 like, Dingo, hello. Just like, I'm playing it like Link and Zelda, just like.
Well, you just mentioned Dingo there. Also, thematically, the story, it makes sense for it to be quite easy because you're meant to be playing as like the best robot.
Yeah, but you're not meant to be like the best pilot, right?
No, you're not. But Ada is like meant to be quite a lot of the pilot, who's like your AI assistant.
Yeah, I ignore her.
Yeah.
I
You
don't
don't need her. So you're basically playing as there's two robots that are like the best ever, fastest, meanest robots. But you're playing as one that hasn't started the upgrade path yet. And then by the end of it, you're fully upgraded. But like, what did you think of the story?
So for starters, they created a Zone of Enders cinematic universe. So there was like an anime and a manga and everything related to this. So yeah, I was looking up a little bit about it yesterday, and apparently there's a lot of like the story and like setting up the world, which is kind of done in like those other like media things. Yeah. So it was a little bit like, obviously we went in for the second game, but I felt a little bit kind of dropped into the middle, and they introduced a lot of names for places and things quite quickly.
Quite typical Kojima fashion there. I think it's like things you would normally understand, but the fact they give them a silly name, it's like, yeah, I now don't understand what you're saying. But you got some grass in your hair. I've just noticed it. Yeah, it's brown, luckily, so you can't see it. I'll grab it. There's a bit of it. There's more in there. There you go. I don't know what that is. It's gone out. It's only tiny.
Squirrel. Off you ran. Come on.
I'm like, duty. Anyway, what I was going to say about the story, because I thought this might come up, is I read a review from the time when this game came out. Because I also was like, I heard you didn't have to play the first one, but maybe you do. And this reviewer from Destructoid said, to be perfectly clear, you do not need to play the first Zone of Enders to pick this one up, both narratively and mechanically. There's several references that original fans might get, but they're few and far between. Second Runner goes out of its way to keep the conflict driven by hatred between two individuals, the protagonist Dingo and mustache-twirling Nohman. So I think it's like relatively separate. It's just like the names, like, what was it? BAHRAM, Aumanns. Like all these names of things. I didn't really understand. Like they would just lose me with the names of things. Like, oh, it's the Aumanns project. So what does that even do? Like I don't understand what we're fighting.
But I think a lot of that is because I know that there was like for the main villain. Yeah. Like apparently he's kind of going mad, but apparently that's the Metatron, which is like this energy source. Like if too much exposure makes you kind of go crazy. Yeah. And so but I don't think that's really ever explained in the game.
No, the original pitch for Zone of the Enders 2 was you were going to play as Jehuti and you were addicted to Metatron. Oh, okay. And you were meant to be just picking it up and keeping a bar. But they obviously dropped that. So, but yeah, all the characters had silly names, didn't they? We had Dingo Egret, our leading man.
And then Ken.
Ken, who's the agent, female agent. Some sort of double-crossing agent. I didn't really know whose side she was on or what was going on with that.
They kept trying to drop reveals. It's like, oh, I'm actually secretly not for Space Force. I'm with them. I'm like, I don't know. Force, I don't know who any of the ones you mentioned are. So it seems like BAHRAM. So they're like the Mars colony, right? So basically, I think the setup of the world is that like, so the Earth has gone and colonized certain planets, one of them being Mars. Yeah. But then they basically, people that were born on these planets were kind of prejudiced against, and they were sort of like almost used as like slaves to like mine and stuff. But then those countries were kind of like rising up for freedom, but then also it seems like kind of almost overstepping that and like trying to attack. So it's
So basically, you're right, but the part that you've missed is that people still live on Earth. Yeah, they're rich, and everyone on the other planets are in service of Earth. Yeah. So they're mining Mars to send back to Earth. And the people that live outside of Earth's orbit are known as the Enders. Yeah. Which is the Zone of the Enders is where they all live. And your main guy you play as, Dingo, unbelievable name, named after something that exists on Earth, but has never been there. He was a BAHRAM soldier he betrayed his army, became a miner, finds Jehuti, and then they call him back.
Yeah, they try to recruit him again.
And then, he says no.
And then, quite shockingly, they just shoot him like 5 times in the back.
Yes, and the cutscene for that's also really good because it has like anti-gravity blood, doesn't it? Which is really cool. And then he becomes the pilot for the mech, but they were like, you're only alive because you're attached to the mech, and if you leave the mech, you will die. And I was like, do you know what? That's quite a good hook for this game. But then, as the game goes on, the stakes just seem to get lower and lower. To the point where, spoilers for the game, they just remove him and he doesn't die. So he's fine when they remove him.
I realize we sound like kids talking to their parents about Five Nights at Freddy's lore, and like. Just like we just sound like so. They're speaking it like we sound like what the game is like when we were playing it. Like
your mum being like, "Eat your dinner. Let Jehuti eat all his dinner."
So he can't. No, he can't leave it because he betrayed Bahram.
No. It's still what it's like.
He can never leave the cockpit.
It's the same as Death Stranding in that it's like if you explain it in simple terms, it is actually really easy to follow. It's like guy betrays an army, becomes a miner, finds a robot. They try and recruit him. He says no, and they kill him. But it's like Bahram and the Aumanns.
Yeah. And then the other thing to mention is like, so Dingo is just awful. He's just like a horrible like person. And just
they tried to make like the cool, they tried to make like Dante, and they made the biggest misfire. Like, so like people will be speaking to him like, oh, you need to go and help that like miner, and he'd be like, shut up. And it's like, just be nice for 1 minute. Like, you're so horrible. Like, he has a bit of a character arc where he starts to care about Ken.
Yeah, but they just try and do like kind of like banter and quippy, and it just, I mean, the writing overall is really bad. Apparently, it seems like it's the translation is the big factor.
Yes, I actually have. From a review again at the time, actually this is from Wikipedia, talking about the review, said the English dub has often been criticised, with GameSpy referring to it as atrocious, while a reviewer from Electronic Gaming Monthly found that Dingo had the worst deliveries of the entire game. There's an ongoing joke in the game that I just don't understand, where they're like, so-and-so, like, you're so-and-so, you betrayed something, and then the other person goes, but who's the second hand? And it comes up twice. I was like, I don't even understand what you're saying. Like, it doesn't mean anything in English. And they're like, ha ha ha. Like, who's the second hand? Oh, you got me. Like, what
there's a lot of times where you can tell what the joke was meant to be, but it's not delivered in the or whatever emotion they're going for, and you can just see that the actor was obviously just not given any context of what's going on or the line that preceded it. There's even like. It will be like, there's a train going to arrive. It goes like, until the train arrives, we have 10 minutes. Yeah. So like, okay, that makes sense. But it's like, we have 10 minutes until the train arrives. You know, there's like even like little bits like that. But it does kind of cross over into the so bad it's good. Or
it's charming. It's like nostalgically charming.
It's entertaining how bad it is, but I didn't need as many cutscenes as this game had.
Yeah, I also feel like it has a lot of the same like characters like pontificating on the meaning of existence, and like Metal Gear has the same thing, but in Metal Gear they deliver it with such sincerity that like you kind of get on board with it, whereas the voice acting is so bad in this, even though they're saying the same sort of thing, it's like laughable what they're saying. There's one line that really made me laugh, which is near the end when Ken's robot is like left under the rubble, and Dingo's like, Ken, are you hurt? And it like cuts to Ken, and she's like wet-eyed, like, and she goes, everywhere. And then Dingo goes, okay. It's so good. It's so funny. It's so funny.
Oh man, it does like break up the pacing, because it's like a lot of like 10-minute cutscenes or but like spread for. So there's about 2 hours of cutscenes. In the game. This game's about like 5.5 hours ish. Yeah. So it's like kind of just under half the game is cutscenes, and it's not even like, oh, there's the one long cutscene setting it up. It's just like little bursts of gameplay, and then like broken up by cutscenes. And like, if I wasn't doing it for the podcast, I think I would have ended up skipping them because it was just annoying.
Yeah. Also, it has, with the similarities to MGS2, it also has codec calls, which has a lot of the same things as like, you can nudge, you know, in codec calls, you can like nudge the camera around. Yeah. You can also do that in this. And then like when you're watching
sometimes you can look around like you can look around the level in 3D a bit.
Yeah. And in the cutscenes you can zoom. Yeah, which is like MGS, and like the subtitle style being the same as MGS, and the UI literally looks like Metal Gear Solid 2.
And like the sound effects of like going through the menus,
and the fact that like everything has a barcode on it, like a serial number.
Yeah, some of even just like the textures of the environment and some of the suits are really just like Big Shell in MGS2, like that exact. So I mean, it's the same art director.
Yeah, I actually found it surprising how similar. I think. If I wasn't as familiar with MGS2 as I am, and someone said, "Oh, that's a Metal Gear cutscene," I would have been like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
like,
and even
it looks that much like it
when they do like that slow motion effect that they do.
Oh, they're
like,
shuddering.
Yeah, that's a low frame rate. That's a really like big thing I associate with like PS2 Metal Gear Solid.
That's probably the engine, isn't it? Yeah, the same engine, so it probably struggles with the same things.
Well, I think it's intentional, like the way when they do that stylized slow mo.
Yeah, it must be. Because they would have watched it back and been
because
like,
they do it and like they focus on it and like at certain points. Like I think it's a choice, and it's like I like it now because it makes the chemicals in my brain happy.
Yeah.
So I don't even know whether it's a good effect or not, but I like it because it reminds me of good times.
Yeah, and it also has the same kind of game like structure as MGS2. So you have the main campaign, and then when you finish it, you unlock like a couple of costumes. I think that have slightly different effects. Like in MGS2, you can unlock the wig for Raiden.
Oh yeah,
or something like you get the same sort of thing.
Isn't it like infinite ammo or something?
Yeah, infinite ammo and something else. You can get like a wig and some sunglasses. And then in this game, you can get like slightly different paint jobs of Jehuti, and then they have different abilities. And then you also have VR training, which actually is not like VR missions, but it also has EX missions. Did you see those?
No.
So they're a bit like the VR missions in Metal Gear, in that you can play as like different characters and do different things. And also you can play as the other robot, Vic Viper. So he's actually from another game. He's from Gradius. And that's the game, Vic Viper. There's like 5 Gradius games and they're all about Vic Viper. So you can play as him, and his missions are different to Jehuti, like as in they're like 3D shooters.
Oh, okay.
So they added like all this stuff in, but because they stuffed it all like in a menu option, I think a lot of people don't even realize that it's there.
Because there's like PvP as well.
There's PvP with bots. With bots as well.
Yeah,
so,
and you can ship the other frames. Isn't that what they're called? Like
orbital frames.
Orbital frames. Like so you can control that. You know that I assume control difference, but it's kind of weird that, as you say, it's all like in this side content and not explored in the main campaign. Because
I could imagine. This is the sort of game that when I was a kid, I probably would have more or less 100%ed. I think because it's like. When I was a kid, I really liked games like that were really short, but you could like kind of play them over and over. And
it seems designed for that as well, because you're unlocking these sub weapons, of which there's quite a lot throughout the game, and sometimes you unlock them so quick. Like you literally unlock one, and it's like I barely got a chance to use it. It's like now you got this other one. It's like no, wait, I'm still on this first one. No, it's like they're bringing over like new dishes for your food. It's like no, I'm still on my starter thing. Like, and I first I was like, oh, that seems bad pacing, because like you kind of want to have a time to master this one before they had another one. And then at the end I realized like, oh no, I think because it's a short game they wanted to give you them as quick as possible, so when you restart the game with all of them, then this is like your first playthrough is almost your learning and unlocking playthrough, which is a little bit weirder for why there's so many cutscenes and it's so story based. Although
when I did play again on easy mode and I skipped the cutscenes, I got through the game so quickly. I finished the whole game in 3.5 hours because I was just skipping everything on the way through.
I mean, that makes sense. That lines up perfectly for a 5.5 hour playthrough if you were going into unlocking them. So we've focused mainly on story, which is not what I expected the direction this podcast would go in. We haven't actually kind of spoke, apart from explaining how it works, about the combat. So did you enjoy the combat?
I think it's pretty fun. Like it's very easy to pick up and play, and I could see how on the higher difficulty it's like, oh, you need to be like a master of this in order to do well. Despite the reviews I read saying like, oh yeah, it's really great that unlike the first one, the camera, you don't get lost. Whereas in this one, I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Like I'm just kind of keeping a mental image of where all the enemies are and what attacks they're doing so that I know when to block, rather than actually seeing them and reacting to them. Because the camera is mad, and also it's like, oh, I want to pick up a health kit that's over here, but I'm stuck in lock on an enemy there, so I'm just going to kind of fly backwards and to the right and hope that I bang into the
because if you unlock, you're then like very rigid movement, because you can unlock.
But the other thing is with unlocking is you have 2 stick control, but as soon as you let go of the right stick, it snaps behind you. The camera does. So it actually got quite hard to...
A bit disorientating.
Yeah, it's really disorientating.
And then for the way, because obviously you're in these 3D environments of enemies all around you, it will automatically lock on to the closest enemy, and you can manually switch it if you want. But then if you kill that enemy and there's another one behind you, it's suddenly, oh, you're like 180. Yeah. And then a lot of the environments don't have distinctive enough landmarks. Like I kind of wish they just had like different color walls on each side to tell you to track. Like, some, but it's a lot of like the same sort of color background in like these big areas. So just like it sounds kind of harder to keep track of it than it is. You do kind of get the hang of it, but it does sometimes feel, in terms of that side of it a little bit out of your control sometimes. It
Yeah.
does sometimes feel like you can, to a decent standard, the game can almost play itself, and you can like just zoom forward and keep pressing square, and you will at least move to and attack every enemy in the room.
Or ally. As it turns out, your lock-on also grabs onto allies. So one of the moves you've got, probably the move you use most in the game, is a homing shot, which is like huge lasers. But it'll lock onto every single robot, ally or enemy. So a lot of the ally missions, every time you attack, one of the allies somewhere will be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like every time you fight, because one of your homing things will be like, "Whoop," and I go hit them for no reason. I have no idea what the choice was in having it so easy to select an ally.
Especially when it's like, because it's not even just the homing one, because sometimes it'll be like, there's missions where you got to defend allies, and there'll be an ally with like a few enemies round, and I'm just like whacking to try and get rid of them all as quick as I can.
Yeah.
And then like, instead of locking onto one of the enemies, it will lock onto the person. I was
You're
like,
smacking
like,
they're like, "What are you doing?"
but it's like so like, I mean, it's not obviously completely out of your control. But you don't want to be like hitting and then like, oh, they're dead. Quick, stop, square, wait, like it will happen.
Yeah, and it always has a mission where you have to stop allied forces from attacking buildings, because they're like, "We're defending the planet no matter what, and if that means a few buildings have to come down, then so be it." And you have to freeze them. But it's just so difficult to actually do that on purpose that I just let them destroy like whatever they wanted.
Yeah. I don't think I did very well on that mission. It was a cool.
And in the end, they call you, don't they? And they're like, "Oh, you could have done." He's like, "I could have done better."
Yeah.
And they're like, "But lots more people would have died without you." And he's like, "Ugh."
Yeah. Oh well, for me, they call me and they're like, "You did the best. You did amazing," and I just blank face ignore them, as I always did throughout the whole game.
I do think though, I was very surprised. I think this game's got some good moments.
Okay. You love a moment.
I do love a moment. Dingo getting shot. Obviously, that's a cutscene moment.
Yeah.
Wasn't that cool? But still. Fighting that armada of planes when you get the vector cannon and you have to fly between the 5 planes and blow them up.
Yeah, do you want to talk about the vector cannon? why that matters?
Okay, so the vector cannon is like this sub-weapon you get that you have to be staying still and feet planted on the ground to use. And I was a complete sucker for the like all the fake UI coming up. And it's like, orbital laser on, like arming now. And I was literally like, "Whoa, my God!"
It takes like 20 seconds to
so
shoot
cool.
a single
It's
shot.
so cool.
Yeah.
But like, there was a few times I tried to fire it and I just didn't realize whether or not it locked on or if it had fired. So I was just like,
I had times when like I feel like I did everything and said to fire, and then I'd just be standing there like, "Oh, I'll just do it again." Then.
Yeah,
like,
but
that
it's
happened
like
several times.
the typical like big robot thing of like all these different things powering up and like different parts opening. And you have to take out 5 of these huge warships that are all flying. And you kind of have to fly towards them, destroy all the defense mechanisms so you can land on them and blow up the engine with this vector cannon. I really like that mission. I thought it was really good. The one where you chase the train, also pretty cool.
Yeah.
And there is one near the end where it's kind of like this big open field and you have like all of your LEV allies.
Is this like the war?
Yeah, yeah. And the scale of it is very impressive. But I had no idea what was going on. I was just flying around
I think they do a good thing because it's meant to be like this like wave of ally forces moving forward, and they on the mini map
the scale is insane.
You can see loads of enemies. But I realized that I think the impressive thing is the mini map rather than the level, because you never see all of those enemies actually in the game,
and it's really foggy.
Yeah,
it's like you can't see anything
because it's like literally it'd be like 100 little red dots, and I was like, when I saw that I was like, oh, this is cool, this is big epic scale, and I was like, oh no, it's the mini map and the music that is giving me the sense of scale. If that was like, but what I'm actually doing is the same as every other level, apart from sometimes shooting my AI guys.
Well, you're meant to be reviving them with the geyser, aren't you? It's just like, I'm not accurate enough to, because you have to shoot this like freezing thing on them.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Why aren't you helping me? Why?" And you're literally like smacking them with your sword. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Imagine that, just doing that in your real day life. You're in the kitchen, you're gonna like pick up a drink, and you just start like picking up bread. It's like, oh, I locked onto the wrong thing.
Good moments, though.
You gotta shake someone's hand. You're just gonna shake another
shake someone else. You do one person, you instantly turn.
Then start with a drink, and you're like,
I can't stop.
I'm sorry. Auto lock on, these new implants.
Anyway, good moments, good bosses.
Yeah, I thought the bosses were all right.
They're probably the highlight, really.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of them, but it was just going back to what I was saying earlier. Like, there's a lot of times where I just didn't really know why I was sometimes doing damage and sometimes not.
Yeah,
that might just be a me thing. But
no, I agree.
I feel like, yeah, I just wish they didn't have special shields and like or block your attacks all the time unless you do a very specific thing. Like, if they don't want the battle to end longer, just give it a bigger health bar, but let me see like I'm always ticking its health away.
Yeah, they had their own Psycho Mantis as well. That old man that's like,
oh yeah,
and he had quite a cool arena that was all the like moving.
Yeah, he was quite cool as well because he was kind of like one of the good guys, really. But yeah, that was quite cool. Yeah, I feel like the controls were at worst when you're out of combat, and sometimes it's like quite minimal, but you need to just navigate. Like is sometimes a little bit awkward. Like, it really wants you to go in a straight line fast, and anytime you kind of got a turn, and then you're using X and triangle to go up and down. Yeah, at least on PS4 I was, and that was obviously it's not ideal. You can imagine what that's like. Yeah,
was something potentially mad, but I truly believe I think the escort missions in this game are quite good.
Really?
Because I think the hack of the escort mission in this game is the fact that you have to manually pick them up and take them. And when you stop taking them, they slowly go backwards. So it's more like you're always kind of aware of where they are. Whereas I feel like escort missions in other games, characters will just die. And they'll be like, oh, he was trapped on a door. Like, I didn't even realise. Whereas because you're literally carrying them, it's like you're always aware of where they are and what you're doing. And also because I really only used that grab sub-weapon, it wasn't a big difference for me to have to like change to the grab because I was only using it anyway. And I quite liked carrying Taper and carrying Ken. I thought they were actually quite good. Yeah. For variety as well.
I noticed that there was the mission where you're carrying Ken and you've got to try and just keep going up, if you remember. And I was annoyed in that because, like, I grabbed her and I just went to fly up and there was all these enemies. I was like, well, I'm quicker. I just fly away from them. Yeah. And then they just do an invisible ceiling. I was like,
I did the same thing.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I wish they gave like I get it. I'm skipping your content here, but like, come up with a justification. You have like a shield I need to hack or something. Like, don't just put an invisible wall there because I'm doing it in a better way.
Yeah. Also, for that particular one, they could have added places you could leave her that don't break. Because that was it. All the platforms could be broken.
And then like she falls like really slowly.
Really slowly, yeah. Yeah. She's like, why aren't you helping me? Help me. But there is actually, like Metal Gear, on that section, if you let her fall a certain amount of times, it like changes her costume for like the rest of the game. Okay. I think there's quite a few weird little things like that. There's one in the Vic Viper boss fight. It's like if you destroy a certain rock, it has an EX mission buried in it, and you can like get that and then play that mission. Oh, okay. So it has like MGS style little weird secrets in it as well.
And there's little things like when you're going into the final boss fight, which they build up quite a lot. It's quite good. Basically, Ada, your AI, will like say your chances, and it's based on how well you've done. Yeah. So you'll be like, how much chance do I have? And
I didn't know that.
And then she'll be like, oh, not much chance. But you might not give a shot. Or like, oh, you have a good chance if you try your best. Like, nice. Like she'll say it based on, I don't know exactly what it is, probably how many times you've died or whatever. So there's little things like that.
That's very MGS cool as well, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, nice. I mean, that's the main way I enjoyed this game is by comparing it to Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, I know. My highlights was it reminding me of a game that I really loved from when I was a teenager. But I was the combat overall. Like if I'm honest, I got a bit bored of the combat. Like maybe it's because I was on easy. Maybe if I was on normal, I'd have to use things. I kept using. I think is it called the Gauntlet? Is that the one that like you shoot them into walls and does loads of damage? Yeah. That was, for a lot of the game, my go-to. And then the homing missiles, like not the one you were talking about, but the
one that come up behind you, like
that was like against stronger enemies. Like that was very useful. But I think these sort of like very linear combat arena after combat arena,
yeah, it's like, long, isn't it?
Yeah, I get a little bit fatigued by it, and then even from when I was starting to get into a flow, it would do a cutscene and I'd have to listen to that long dialogue again. And it'd be like 10 to 20 minutes of like this bad dialogue, and then I'd have a little bit of gameplay, and then it would start another one. And I always felt like I was in like first gear. I never felt like it got to the point when it was like, and now you can go onto the highway and like cruise. And and I always felt like I was getting stop-started, or I'm like, okay, I'm getting the hang of it. Now it's added a new sub-weapon. It's like, okay, I'm going to like do that, but I was just still using the other one. So yeah, I never got into a flow state playing this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I just pretty much used the grab the entire time because it's so strong. So you grab an enemy and then spin around holding them, which smacks all the robots around you, and then you throw it into another one. And it's like you could clear out a group in like 2 throws. Yeah. that's pretty much what I did for the entire game. So I didn't do much more than that. But so I appreciate them trying to do variety anyway. The train and the open battlefield.
Oh yeah, no, they don't like with the different bosses and stuff. But then that kind of falls into what I said earlier, where you'll get a boss where it's like, this is the one strategy to beat them.
Yeah,
and literally, none of your other sub weapons or anything will do it. Whereas I always prefer bosses to almost be an exam to prove what you've learned. When a boss is, oh no, this is a very specific thing for this boss. Like might be interesting for one or two bosses, but when most of them are that, I'm like, no, I just want a much harder version of what I've been facing, because that's what I've been getting at and like practicing up until here.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think we're pretty much done, aren't we? Good art direction, I'd say. Great music. The music, I recognised a lot of the music they use in Metal Gear Online. So, you know, like in online shooters, towards the end, they start playing music at the end of the match. A lot of it was the music from this game. So I was like, oh, I remember this from...
and like a lot of songs with like lyrics, or at least vocals in as well.
Yeah.
There's a song I was listening to yesterday. I was watching a video talking about it, where it's based on like the Finnish language, but it's not actually like real words
from this game.
Yeah, so it's made to sound like Finnish, but like it's actually gibberish. But they were inspired by the maybe it was a particular Finnish song or the language.
That's weird, because you'd think it would be more like Egyptian.
Yeah.
Because it's got a strong Egyptian theme through the whole game, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot of the frames are like Egyptian. Yeah, kind of themed. And there is some kind of Egyptian-y EDM style songs as well.
There was also that really cool song, because the fight that took me the longest was one against Vic Viper. It was a nightmare. It has like football chanting in it. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool as well. I think like in terms of, because the art style was so strong, the models look good, the particle effects look good, the environments don't look so good anymore.
No, which is, to be fair, like you're whizzing past them normally so much. It's kind of fair enough, but yeah, they do feel a bit like empty void sometimes.
Yeah.
Did we get any questions? Did anyone else play it?
It's a bit of a niche one. Not a lot of people played it. I saw some people talking about it, like, oh, you can buy it for £25, and I wanted to come in and be like, don't buy it. Don't worry about it. Just watch the show. It's fine. Adam OY6NC on YouTube, who writes in quite a lot, says, given that it's originally released in 2003, how do you think the game's controls and fighting mechanics hold up against modern action games? Do you feel improvements made in the HD remaster sufficiently bridge the gap, or are there aspects that still feel dated by today's standards? I didn't know how it originally played, but I think the main thing, it's not the controls, it's the depth. Like, compared to modern action games, there's like no depth here, really. Yeah,
and like feedback for like, I think games have got much better for like feedback for doing damage and receiving damage, and like a sense of impact, I feel is probably an area that games have progressed on.
Yeah. I agree.
Like, I mean, I'm weird for like these like big mech games, is like I've never really got into any of them. And I feel like, for one, I'm like, if they're doing a big mech game, and if they're doing it kind of more realistic, it's going to be quite slow and lumbering, and that doesn't seem fun. But then this has gone so far the other way, where you're so fast, and then it kind of gets to the point where, like you were saying, it's like almost doesn't matter that you're in a mech.
Yeah,
like, you might as well be like Superman,
just
or
a guy.
Like or Iron Man or something. Like it's sort of, it doesn't, like I have no sense of scale whatsoever, because I feel light as a feather like while I'm flying around.
How would you design a mech game?
I think I would try and get a mixture where, so you're normally quite slow and like you have this like big sense, but then you can have like a burst of speed.
Okay.
So then you can get the sense of like scale, like I'm going and like bang, like really like shaking the earth as I tread around.
Yeah.
But then like you could like boost fast for a bit if you use your rockets, but then they'd have like a longer recharge on it. So it's like really an intentional like, oh, I'm getting shot, I got to time this like big burst at the right time, and then I'm slow, and then I'm shooting back. I think I'd probably try and go down that route to like, because if you're doing a mech game, you might as well make it feel like you're in a mech and you're in a big thing. Because otherwise, what's the point of doing it? But going slow could be annoying. So like, I think maybe some sort of middle ground. But it seems like a lot of the ones these days are going for like
faster.
Yeah, fast. Like the new Armored Core is really fast, whereas the older ones were a little bit more lumbering.
Yeah, I think I'd take advantage of the fact that it's a mech by having like components. So I'd be like, oh, you have the fast component, or maybe you are fast, but if your legs break, you go back to the slower, so you can then repair it. Oh, no, be like
that's
you
a
can
lot more
change.
Armored Core.
Yeah,
isn't
like
it?
changing things seems like the best thing about being a robot, right? Like, oh, I have the gun arm this time, or like the speedy legs, rather than just.
I mean, Titanfall. That's probably the best mech game.
Well, they're just slow and strong, aren't they? But you don't have them all the time.
Well, it's the pilot / Titan dynamic that I think makes those interesting. It's like you're running around, you've got that fast, and now it's like a change of gameplay, but there's other people still running. Yeah.
That's my favourite trope in a game. They're like, you got the big gun now. That's my favourite thing. Because
you're building up to, whereas this game, like it's like you could reskin it and make it not a mech game almost.
Yeah, definitely.
At least for like the movement.
Yeah, for sure. Right. List?
Yep, let's put it on the list.
Did you know we have a Patreon? Maybe you're unsure what that is.
Patreon allows you to support us directly, and in return you get exclusive stuff. Access to our Discord server, behind-the-scenes content, and an exclusive podcast series.
Your support means we can up our production and continue making fun videos. You can join us at patreon.com/the bonus points. And it has a free trial too.
Woohoo!
Still also getting comments that Zero Range is too low. Just to let you know.
Okay.
That game is criminally low on our list. Anyway, that's actually another game where you play as a mech.
Yeah, kind of.
Also, I can't believe I'm bringing it up this late in the game. Last episode, I said Zone of the Enders was the first Konami game we've done, and it's not.
Oh, what's the other one?
You picked it.
Oh, was it Survival Kids?
It's Survival Kids, yeah. Isn't it like
that's...
Con and Army with the two characters as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Of course.
There we go.
Right, is this...
Where is
this
Survival
the best Konami game we've played? So Survival Kids is at 42 at the moment, which might actually be... Oh,
I think it needs to be lower than that.
Yeah, I think so. So we're looking at... I mean, Dredge is at 50.
It needs to be lower than Dredge.
Then we got Elite at 51.
I think around Onimusha, Max Payne, 55, 56.
Okay.
That's where I think. For me, I was like, I'm not disappointed by it, but I also I'm not impressed by it, and I will never think about it ever again. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm looking at so the other games in that area.
Yeah.
None of them I was like for this game I was kind of almost looking forward to being done with it.
Oh, okay. I wasn't that far.
Not because I was hating it and I was just basically I don't need to go over again why, but from what I said earlier about the combat and the cutscenes, like I felt obligated to finish it for the podcast. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'd have probably stopped halfway through and been like, okay, it's cool. I know what these games are now. And I was done. But whereas I look at like the Beginner's Guide or even like the Dig or Onimusha, like none of those games was I thinking like, oh, I wish I was done.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be under those. So it probably... I think I'd probably put it under Kururin, which is at 57.
I think that's a good place
and
for it,
then
actually.
above World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I think I agree, actually. World of Warcraft was the first of this section, was the first game where I was like, oh, I have to play it.
Yeah, that's another example of that for me, which I think World of Warcraft's a better game than this. Just for those that didn't see the World of Warcraft episode, we appreciated World of Warcraft, but I think those types of MMOs just aren't our kind of games. That's why it's so low. Yeah. Whereas I think this is... I think there is a version of this game that I would enjoy, and this wasn't it. Probably the new Armored Core.
Yeah. No, I will say I was enjoying it a lot more. But I mean, to be fair, I played it like twice as much as you. I've almost finished it on normal.
Yeah.
And then went back to easy.
Can't get enough.
I know. I was enjoying it a lot more to start with, and then my enjoyment was definitely going down the longer it went on. And I was like, this character sucks and his friends are lame. And his plot doesn't make sense. So I think that might be it. 58 for Zone of the Enders.
58. So... Yeah, I was going to say congratulations, Zone of the Enders, but I guess it's not.
Well, which point do we stop saying congratulations? Under Kuru?
I think at this point, so there's now 65 games on the list. Yep. I think if it gets above 50, we say congratulations.
Okay.
Because like Dredge is like a good, like Dredge was a decent game, and it's like if you're up there, new DLC announced for Dredge.
Yes, I heard.
If you saw that, but yeah, Zone of the Enders 2 second runner. I know obviously this is a little bit of a cult classic game. If you are someone who got this game growing up, one of the few people that did
I
this.
actually know. Oh no, it didn't sell like 90,000 copies.
So if not at launch, so looking it up, I think it was even less than that.
They considered it mediocre sales for the time. I don't know, because obviously games are way more popular now than they were when this came out, but they considered it mediocre when it came out. So
it wasn't. I guess there's a reason they ended up cancelling the third one. Makes sense. But yeah, I could, like, if someone said to me like, oh yeah, I played this as a kid, I loved it, and like I always replay it now, like I go back to it, like I would be like, oh yeah, I see that there's enough there that if you really like that style of combat, like it would be satisfying to kind of keep going back to. Like if someone said like, oh yeah, I'm a really big Zone of the Enders fan, I would be like, what are you on about? It's a bad game. Like I can see what there is, but I don't think it was probably really for us. But it's good to know. Yeah,
the franchise, like the robot design is also really popular. So like I was looking at a little Jehuti model kit, because I thought that'd be quite a fun little video. We can make model kit. They're so expensive, and there was loads of news stories that are like, it's finally been restocked, with people commenting like, oh my god, I can't wait to have Jehuti and Anubis. Like, people really like the robots.
Yeah,
I think they like it probably more than they like the game.
Yeah,
I guess maybe the anime and the manga and stuff, maybe people really like those as well. There is also a Game Boy Advance game called, hang on,
it's like a strategy game.
Zone of the Enders, The Fist of Mars, it's called. Or it's known in Japan as Zone of the Enders 2173 Testament. I think it's a bit more like...
I don't know which of those names is worse.
Yeah. I think it's a bit more... I'm getting a very flattering comparison for Zone of the Enders now. It's a bit more like Into the Breach than it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I'll be playing that one. I'll be skipping that one.
No, I didn't even... until recently, I didn't even know that was a thing when I've been researching Game Boy Advance games. I guess you'd probably play Advance Wars above that, maybe.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Or Final Fantasy Tactics. But yeah, that's only Enders, I think. I think we're done.
Cool, awesome. So should we talk about upcoming games we're going to be doing on the pod?
Yes, next time. It's a big one. Pokemon Gold and Silver, the Game Boy Color versions. You're still on Silver?
Yep, still playing Silver.
Gold over
I've
it.
not switched colour way through.
Oh, Gold Boy over it. Still on it. That's 28th of June. That should be a fun one. And then 12th of July, we've got Skate with a guest.
Yeah, the original Skate, obviously.
The original Skater.
So I know they're
That's our guest.
Because obviously they're remaking or doing a new Skate, which is also just called Skate, right?
Yeah,
Skate with like a full stop.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, I don't know when people are watching this, but we were doing the original Xbox 360.
Yeah, from like 2011, I think, 2010 maybe.
Yeah.
And then on the 26th of July, we are now, for the first time, speaking of big mech games, announcing we're doing Titanfall 2.
Yeah! So basically, we did a skill check video, which is the video where we kind of roll a dice to play a game, and then we got to roll a dice again to see how good we play at it, and the other person's got to guess what they roll. We did that playing Titanfall 2, and it kind of just got us discussing Titanfall 2 again and be like, this game is very good.
So good.
And so I was like, if we do it for the podcast, I can play it for 2 weeks guilt-free. So we're going to be discussing Titanfall 2, and we'll see which mech game rules out.
Yes, and we're doing single player and multiplayer.
Yeah.
And in the Bonus Points Discord, we'll be organising game nights for Titanfall 2. I should think the ones that we're playing will be the Xbox version, right?
Yeah, because I don't think it's cross-play, right? It's kind of before that revolution. But you can still get games on the Xbox because we were able to when we searched. But yeah, so if you are on the Discord or want to join the Discord, keep an eye out because, we'll be playing that as a group, which I think is the best way to play any of these sorts of games.
Yeah, for sure. And the last video we put out would have been the skill check one, actually. So check that out if you haven't seen it. And I think that is everything.
Okay, cool, awesome. So we'll see you all in 2 weeks' time to discuss Pokemon. But apart from that, thank you all so much for watching or listening, and we'll see you all later. Bye!
Cheers, everyone. Bye.